I can't do this! I'm sorry, I can't! Please forgive me!
9 women in 28 days. Some fled naked. One laughed nervously. One called me a monster. I control Busan's criminal elite, but no woman stays.
His phone buzzed on the nightstand. He didn't reach for it immediately. Let it ring. Let the world wait. He was tired of performing, tired of trying, tired of hoping that maybe this time would be different. Sir. The voice of his head of security, Kim Min-jae, crackled through. I know it's late, but I found someone different. Street raised. No fear. She's unusual. Not like the others. Tae-Rin closed his eyes. How many times had he heard that? How many times had Min-jae or his other men promised someone different, only for the same pattern to repeat? She grew up in Lagos, Min-jae continued. Moved to Seoul 5 years ago. Works 3 jobs. Has a record. Minor assault charges, all dropped. All self-defense. She doesn't scare easy, sir. I watched her stare down a gang of loan sharks last week without flinching. Something in the description caught his attention. Not the fearlessness. Plenty of people pretended to be fearless until they met him. But the specifics. The details. Min-jae didn't usually provide this much information unless he genuinely believed it mattered. Tae-Rin exhaled slowly, still staring at the ceiling, at the shadows cast by city lights filtering through floor-to-ceiling windows. Send her. He had no idea this woman would become the one thing he couldn't control. 3 days later, the door to his private office opened without a knock. No assistant announced her. No security cleared her entry. The protocol he'd established, the layers of protection and formality that kept the world at arm's length. She walked through all of it like it didn't exist. Mary Itodo stood in ripped jeans and a black tank top, her natural hair pulled back in a high puff, her eyes calm and steady as she surveyed the room. She looked around like she was inspecting it, not intimidated by the expensive art on the walls or the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Busan's skyline, or the man behind the massive mahogany desk who made grown men weep. Seo Tae-Rin. His guards moved forward instantly, hands on their weapons. Nobody used his name like that. Nobody walked in uninvited. The disrespect alone was enough to get someone disappeared. She didn't even glance at them. Tae-Rin raised one hand, and his men froze mid-motion. He studied her from behind his desk. This woman who carried herself like she'd walked through worse than armed men in expensive suits. There was something in her posture. Not arrogance, exactly, but a bone-deep confidence that came from surviving things that should have killed her. You're late, he said flatly. Traffic, she replied, pulling out the chair across from him and sitting without permission. You're the one who needs a personal assistant, right? Do you know what this job requires? Mary tilted her head slightly, studying him the way he was studying her. Classified secrets. Constant danger. Publicly pretending to be your fiancée, so your business partners think you're stable enough to trust with their money and their lives. She paused. The salary's obscene, by the way. You're either desperate or testing me. His eyes narrowed. Both. Fair. He leaned forward, resting his forearms on the desk. 9 women have run from me in the last month. Some lasted hours. The longest made it 3 days. What makes you different? Mary didn't break eye contact. I've survived worse than men with guns and money, Mr. Seo. You want someone who won't break? I don't break. You want someone who'll play the part? I'll play it. But don't confuse an act with weakness, and don't confuse compliance with stupidity. I know exactly what this job is. Do you? You need a shield, she said simply. Someone to make you look human to people who need to believe you're capable of normal relationships. Someone to stand beside you at dinners and galas and meetings, so they stop whispering that you're unstable. Someone who can handle secrets that would get most people killed. And you need someone who won't fall apart when things get violent, because they will get violent. Something shifted in the room. His guards exchanged glances. Tae-Rin felt it too. The strange pull of meeting someone who didn't see him as a monster or a meal ticket. Just a man offering a job with specific requirements. The contract is non-negotiable, he said, sliding papers across the desk. You'll live here in the penthouse. You'll attend every meeting, every dinner, every public appearance. You'll know things that could get you killed if they fall into the wrong hands. You'll be a target for my enemies and my allies alike. And if you run, I won't. You don't know that. Mary picked up the pen, her expression unreadable. I know exactly what I'm signing. The question is whether you know what you're getting. She signed her name in clean, confident strokes and pushed the contract back across the desk. So when do I start pretending I'm in love with you? Tae-Rin felt something he hadn't felt in years. Anticipation. Not dread. Not resignation. Actual curiosity about what would happen next. Tomorrow, he said. There's a gala. High profile. Half the city's elite will be there. Then I'll need a dress. That's already arranged. Mary stood, slinging her worn backpack over one shoulder. We'll see about that. If you're hooked already, subscribe to Oyinelle Afro-Korean Romance where African fire meets Korean power. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from, and what's got you glued to this story so far. Hit like and share if you're ready for this to get even more intense. Because trust me, we're just getting started. The stylist held up a champagne-colored dress with a price tag that could feed a village for months. The fabric shimmered in the light, delicate and expensive and completely wrong. Mary stared at it like it was a weapon pointed at her face. Absolutely not. Miss Itodo, this is Valentino. Mr. Seo specifically requested. Mr. Seo can request all he wants. I'm not wearing that. Mary turned to the racks of shoes lined up like soldiers, all heels, all impossibly high, all designed to make women beautiful and unstable. And I'm definitely not wearing those. The stylist, a rail-thin woman named Park Ji-woo who dressed celebrities and politicians, looked genuinely distressed. But the gala will survive me wearing something I can actually move in. Tae-Rin appeared in the doorway of the dressing suite, perfectly composed in a black suit that probably cost more than Mary had made in the last 6 months. His expression was neutral, but she was learning to read the micro-expressions that flickered across his face. Right now he was curious. The gala is in 2 hours. Then you'd better find me boots in the next hour and 59 minutes. The stylist actually gasped. His guards, stationed outside the door, tensed visibly. Tae-Rin's expression remained neutral, but something flickered in his eyes. Amusement, maybe. Or surprise. You're my fiancée, he said carefully. You need to look the part. Mary turned to face him fully, crossing her arms. I am looking the part. The part of a woman who doesn't let anyone dress her like a doll. You hired me because I don't break, remember? Because I don't run. That includes breaking myself into shapes that aren't mine just to make other people comfortable. The silence stretched between them. Ji-woo held her breath. The guards waited for Tae-Rin's reaction. He studied Mary for a long moment. This woman who'd been in his employment for less than 24 hours and was already pushing boundaries nobody else dared approach. Then he nodded once at the stylist. Get her boots. Mary ended up in a sleek black jumpsuit that moved like water, tailored to perfection but allowing full range of motion. The boots were combat style but designer, leather so soft it felt like butter, with a price tag that made her eyes water. When she looked at herself in the mirror, she saw someone who looked expensive and dangerous in equal measure. Better, she said. Tae-Rin appeared behind her in the mirror. You look lethal. Good. That's the point. When she walked into the gala on Tae-Rin's arm, every head turned. The ballroom was massive, dripping with crystal chandeliers and old money. Women in gowns worth more than cars glittered like expensive jewelry themselves. Men in tuxedos moved through the crowd like sharks in designer clothing. And every single one of them stopped to stare at the woman in the black jumpsuit and combat boots. Especially the head of Yoon Se-ah, his polished ex-girlfriend who controlled half of Seoul's fashion empire, and had expected to control Tae-Rin himself. She stood near the champagne fountain in a white gown that probably required an engineering degree to wear. Her face perfectly made up, her smile sharp as broken glass. Mary felt Tae-Rin's arm tense under her hand the moment he saw Se-ah. Ex-Friend. Mary murmured. Something like that. The one who ran? The one who tried to change me first. His voice was flat, emotionless, but Mary heard the hurt underneath. Se-ah glided over, her movements practiced and graceful, her smile never wavering. Up close, Mary could see the calculation in her eyes, the way she assessed and dismissed in the same glance. Tae-Rin, darling. I see you're slumming. Mary felt Tae-Rin's entire body go rigid. She squeezed his arm once, a signal, then stepped forward with a smile that could cut diamonds. You must be the ex who thought expensive taste could replace an actual personality. I've heard so much about you. She paused. Well, not much. Tae-Rin doesn't talk about past mistakes often. Seo smile froze. And you are. The present. The future. The reason he stopped answering your calls. Mary leaned in slightly, her voice dropping to a conversational tone that somehow carried more threat than any shout. And if you ever speak to him like that again, I'll make sure every business partner in this room knows exactly how you acquired your seed money. I'm very good at research. The color drained from Seo's face. Her eyes widened fractionally, genuine fear flickering across her features. She knew. Somehow this street-raised nobody knew about the embezzlement, the forged documents, the carefully buried scandal that would destroy her empire if it ever came to light. You're bluffing, Seo said, but her voice shook. Mary smiled wider. Am I? Would you like to test that theory? Because I have copies of the wire transfers, the falsified contracts, the identity theft you committed to secure your first investors. She tilted her head. Want me to keep going? Or would you prefer to walk away and pretend this conversation never happened? Seo's face went from pale to red. For a moment, Mary thought she might actually swing. Instead, she turned on her expensive heel and stalked away, her white gown swirling dramatically. Mary stepped back, looping her arm through Tae-Rin's again. Enjoy the gala. She could feel eyes on them from every direction. 3 phones had definitely captured the entire exchange. By midnight, the footage would be viral. By morning, Tae-Rin's reputation would shift. Did you actually research her? Tae-Rin asked quietly as they moved toward the bar. Of course. I research everyone in your circle. Know your enemies better than they know themselves. That's basic strategy. She glanced up at him. Did you want me to play nice? No. Something that might have been a smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. I definitely did not want that. By midnight, the footage was everywhere. Social media exploded with speculation. Who was this mystery woman who'd put Yoon Seo in her place? Where had Seo Tae-Rin found her? And why did she look more dangerous than half his security team? The whispers shifted. People no longer murmured that Tae-Rin was unstable, that women fled from him because he was broken beyond repair. They whispered that he'd found a woman more dangerous than himself. And they were right. The restaurant was the kind of place where deals were made in shadows and blood was cleaned from marble, without questions asked. No windows. No signs. Just a door in an alley that opened only for people who knew the right names to say. Mary sat beside Tae-Rin at a table with 5 men who controlled enough criminal empire to topple governments. Arms dealers. Money launderers. Men who'd built fortunes on suffering and maintained them through fear. She'd done her research on all of them. She played her part flawlessly. Her hand rested on Tae-Rin's arm at precisely the right moments. A gesture of unity and possession that these men understood. She laughed at the appropriate times, soft and musical. The sound of a woman comfortable in her power. She leaned into him when the conversation turned tense, a physical reminder that he wasn't alone. The oldest crime lord, a man named Choi Dae-young who'd built his empire on trafficking and terror, studied her with eyes that had seen too much death to be fooled by a pretty face. You're young, Seo, Choi said, cutting into his steak with surgical precision. Young men make impulsive decisions. Mary felt it through where her hand rested on his arm. Youth isn't a weakness when it's paired with vision, Mary said, her voice carrying across the table with unexpected authority. Every man turned to look at her. She met their gazes without flinching. My fiancé has taken what you built and evolved it. Expanded territories you couldn't touch. Secured supply lines you couldn't access. That's not inexperience. That's innovation. And if you can't recognize the difference, perhaps it's time to reconsider whether you're still relevant to this conversation. The table went silent. Choi's knife stopped mid-cut. Tae-Rin's hand found Mary's under the table, a warning squeeze that she ignored. She didn't back down. didn't soften her expression, didn't apologize. Choi stared at her for a long moment, his face unreadable. Then he threw his head back and laughed, the sound genuine and surprised. I like this one. She has teeth. He raised his glass. To Seo Tae-Rin and his fearless fiancée. May your partnership be as profitable as it is entertaining. The other men raised their glasses. The tension broke. The deal moved forward. 50 million won in arms contracts, guaranteed protection across 3 ports, and expanded territory into areas Tae-Rin had been trying to access for 2 years. All because Mary had defended him when she had absolutely no obligation to do so. In the car afterward, Tae-Rin turned to her, something unreadable in his expression. You took a massive risk. It worked. It could have gotten us both killed. Mary reached into her clutch and pulled out a phone. Not hers. She tossed it to him casually. He caught it, recognition flickering across his face. This is Choi's phone. Pickpocketed it when I leaned over to refill his drink. Went through his messages during dessert. Cloned the SIM card before we left. She met his eyes. I have every contact, every transaction, every blackmail file he's been sitting on for the last decade. Insurance, in case your charm didn't close the deal. Tae-Rin stared at her, and for the first time in years, he felt his body react to a woman not out of obligation or attempted normalcy, but genuine desire. Not just physical, though that was there too. Something deeper, more dangerous. He wanted to know her, understand her, figure out what made a woman this fearless. Where did you learn that? He asked quietly. The streets teach you things universities never could. That's not an answer. Mary turned to look out the window at the city lights blurring past. It's the only one you're getting tonight. I'm giving you a raise, he said, still holding Choi's phone. Mary smirked, her reflection ghostly in the window. I know. The weeks blurred together in a cascade of chaos Mary seemed to thrive in while everyone else scrambled to keep up. She exposed a mole in Tae-Rin's security team by tracing a pattern in missing inventory reports that nobody else had noticed. She walked into a warehouse standoff alone, emerged with a signed confession and a bruised knuckle, and refused medical attention. She appeared behind armed men without making a sound, her presence a ghost story his enemies started telling each other in hushed tones. One of his suppliers, a man named Park who'd been skimming profits for months, swore he saw her appear out of thin air behind him. 1 second the room was empty. The next she was just there. Didn't make a sound. Didn't even breathe loud. Just stood there with those eyes like she could see right through me. And she had zero boundaries with Tae-Rin. She walked into his bedroom at dawn to brief him on intelligence reports. Not caring that he was barely awake, her voice crisp and professional as she outlined potential threats. She interrupted his shower to tell him about a phone call he needed to make immediately, speaking through the bathroom door like it was completely normal. She fell asleep on his couch reading financial documents. Her natural hair spread across throw pillows like a crown. Her face peaceful in sleep in a way it never was when she was awake. The proximity was suffocating. Every time he turned around, she was there. Calm. Capable. Completely unaffected by the tension that was slowly driving him insane. While he was losing his mind, she seemed perfectly content. One night, after she'd casually mentioned dismantling a blackmail scheme before breakfast like it was something normal people did, Tae-Rin cornered her in the hallway outside his office. Where did you learn this? Learn what? She looked genuinely confused. Kumba. Strategy. The way you read people like they're books written in your language. The way you move like you've had military training. His voice was low, intense. You're not just a survivor, Mary. You've been trained. Professionally. Something flickered across her face, too fast to read. Fear? Anger? Memory? I learned what I needed to survive. That's not an answer. It's the only one you're getting. She tried to move past him. His hand caught her wrist, not rough but firm enough to stop her. You know everything about me, he said quietly. My business, my past, my failures. The women who ran. The reason I needed you in the first place. But I don't know anything about you. Not really. Mary looked at his hand on her wrist, then slowly up at his face. Maybe that's safer for both of us. I don't care about safe. You should. The air between them crackled with something neither of them wanted to name. Heat. Tension. Want. All the things they'd been carefully ignoring while they played their parts. Why? Tae-Rin asked, his thumb brushing across her pulse point. What are you so afraid I'll find out? That I'm not the person you think I am? Then show me who you really are. Mary pulled away gently, and he let her go even though everything in him wanted to hold on. She disappeared into her room, leaving him standing in the hallway, heart pounding like he'd run a marathon. Inside her room, Mary leaned against the closed door, eyes shut, breathing carefully controlled. Her wrists still tingled where he'd touched her. Her heart raced in a way that had nothing to do with fear, and everything to do with want. And that terrified her more than any threat ever could. It happened on a Tuesday night after a meeting that went sideways in the worst possible way. One of Tae-Rin's associates, a man named Lee who'd been making promises he couldn't keep, brought armed backup to what was supposed to be a simple negotiation. Shots were fired. Mary threw herself in front of Tae-Rin before his guards could react, her body a shield, her eyes blazing with fury when she realized the shooter was already down. Taken out by Min-jae. Are you insane? Tae-Rin grabbed her shoulders, spinning her to face him, his hands running over her arms and torso checking for injuries. You could have been killed. So could you. That's not your job. My job is whatever keeps you alive. She shoved at his chest. Emotions she usually locked down pouring out in a flood. You pay me to stand beside you, to protect your reputation, to play the part. Well, part of that part is making sure you don't die in some warehouse because your security was half a second too slow. They were both breathing hard, adrenaline and fear, and something much more complicated coursing through them. Blood roared in Tae-Rin's ears. His hands were still on her shoulders, gripping too tight probably, but he couldn't make himself let go. You could have died, he repeated, his voice rough. But I didn't. Mary. He kissed her. He expected her to pull away, to slap him, to laugh and call it stress relief and walk away like nothing had happened. She kissed him back, her hands fisted in his shirt, pulling him closer as she matched his intensity with her own. The kiss was fierce and desperate, and months of tension exploding into something neither of them could control. She tasted like adrenaline and danger, and something uniquely her. When they finally broke apart, both of them were shaking. Mary stepped back immediately, her expression shuddering like doors slamming closed. Stress relief. Adrenaline. That's all that was. Mary, I'm going to file the incident report. She turned and walked away, her footsteps steady, her shoulders straight, giving absolutely no indication that she was falling apart inside. Leaving Tae-Rin standing in the aftermath, wanting more, needing more, and knowing she'd never let herself give it. The power had reversed. The man who owned everything couldn't keep one woman. Two I tried to warn you about. Tae-Rin is too much. Too intense. Too broken. No normal woman can handle him for long. The darkness in him, it swallows everything. He's not darkness, Mary said quietly, something fierce and protective rising in her chest like a tidal wave. He's a man who's been hurt so many times that he built walls to survive. And maybe instead of running from that, instead of trying to fix him or change him or make him smaller so you could handle him, someone should have had the courage to stay. Seo's smile faltered. He's not too much, Mary continued, her voice steady and sure and burning with conviction. You were too little. Too small. Too afraid. You wanted the power and the money and the status, but you didn't want him. Not really. Not the complicated, difficult, real parts of him. You wanted a sanitized version you could control. And when you couldn't have that, you ran and blamed him for it. You don't know what you're talking about. Don't I? Mary stepped closer, her voice dropping. You call him broken like it's his fault. Like pain is something to be ashamed of. But he survived things that would have destroyed weaker people. He built an empire from nothing. He commands respect in a world that eats the weak. And yes, he's intense. Yes, he's complicated. Yes, he's demanding and difficult and sometimes impossible. But he's also loyal and brilliant and capable of depths you never bothered to explore. Seo's face flushed red. You'll see. Give it time. You'll run too. No, Mary said simply. I won't. She walked away, leaving Seo speechless and trembling with rage. She didn't see Tae-Rin standing behind a marble column 20 feet away, hearing every single word. He'd come looking for her to tell her about a call he needed to make. Instead, he'd heard her defend him with a ferocity that stole his breath. Not because she had to. Not because it was part of the act. But because she meant it. He waited until Seo had stalked away, before stepping out from behind the column. Mary stood alone by the fountain, staring at the champagne she'd abandoned, her shoulders tight with tension. "You heard that," she said without turning around. "Yes. I didn't say it for you to hear." "I know." She finally turned to face him. "Seo is toxic. Don't listen to anything she says." "I'm not worried about Seo." He moved closer, his voice quiet. "You defended me. It's my job." "No," he said firmly. "It's not. Your job is to stand beside me at events. To play a role. To protect my reputation. Not to eviscerate my ex-girlfriend for saying things that aren't entirely untrue." "They are untrue. Am I not too much? Haven't women run from me?" "They ran because they were cowards," Mary said fiercely. "Because they wanted something from you, without being willing to give anything back. That's not on you. That's on them." Something shifted in Tae-Rin's chest. Something that had been locked down for years cracked open. "Why do you care?" he asked quietly. The question hung in the air between them. Mary opened her mouth, closed it, tried again. "Because..." She took a shaky breath. "Because I know what it's like to be called too much. Too angry. Too intense. Too damaged. I know what it's like to have people run because they can't handle the weight of who you really are." Her voice dropped. "And I know what it's like to build walls so high that nobody can hurt you anymore. But those walls also mean nobody can reach you. Nobody can see you. And that's the loneliest thing in the world." "Is that why you keep running from me?" "I'm not running." "You are." He stepped closer, close enough that she could feel the heat of him. "Every time we get close, you shut down. You call it stress relief or adrenaline or professionalism. But I see you, Mary. I see the way you look at me when you think I'm not watching. I see the way your hands shake after you touch me. I see the way you catch your breath when I walk into a room. You feel this too. This thing between us that's so much bigger than a contract or an act. Feeling it doesn't mean acting on it." "Why not?" "Because I don't do dependence." The words burst out of her, raw and honest and terrified. "I don't do attachment. I don't let people become necessary because necessary means vulnerable and vulnerable means someone can hurt you." Tae-Rin finished quietly, understanding flooding through him. "I know. God, Mary, I know. Do you think I don't understand that? Do you think I haven't spent years keeping people at arm's length for exactly the same reason? Then you know why we can't do this." "No. I know why we're both terrified. But I'm asking anyway." He reached for her hand, his touch gentle. "I'm asking you to try. Not as my employee. Not as part of an act. Not as the woman I pay to stand beside me. As yourself. As Mary. With me. As Tae-Rin. Just us. Real. Messy. Terrifying. Real." Mary's eyes shimmered with tears she refused to let fall. "What if I can't? What if I'm not capable of this? Then we figure it out together." His thumb brushed across her knuckles. "But I don't need you perfect, Mary. I don't need you fearless or invulnerable or anything other than honest. I just need you to stop running." The words broke something open in her chest. All the walls she'd built, all the distance she'd maintained, all the fear she'd been carrying for years like armor. "I'm scared," she whispered, the admission costing her everything. "Me too. What if this doesn't work? What if we destroy each other? What if we don't? What if we're exactly what the other person needs?" She looked up at him, and this time when he leaned in, she didn't pull away, didn't call it adrenaline, didn't pretend it was anything other than what it was. A choice. A risk. A step towards a man once rejected for being too much. Chosen by the one woman who could handle all of him. Not by changing him. Not by fixing him. Not by making him smaller or easier or less complicated. But by meeting him exactly where he was and refusing to run. "I love you," she whispered against his lips. "I love you too," he replied. All of you. Even the parts you think are too much. Especially those parts, she corrected with a smile. Especially those parts, he agreed. Around them, the future they'd built together hummed with possibility. A reformed crime lord using his empire for good. A street-raised survivor building platforms to help others survive and thrive. Two people who'd been told they were too much, too broken, too difficult, proving that the right person doesn't make you smaller. They expand their world to make room for all of you. If this story moved you, smash that like button and share it with someone who loves powerful romance that doesn't pull punches. Drop a comment with your favorite scene. Whether it was that first confrontation with the ex, the dinner where Mary defended him, the warehouse kiss, or when she finally stopped running. And subscribe to Oyinelle Afro-Korean Romance because the next story is coming, and it's going to hit even harder. Tell me where you're watching from, and what part of this journey captured your heart. What moment made you feel something real? I want to hear from you. Until next time, remember that the right person doesn't make you smaller to fit their world. They expand their world to make room for all of you. Every complicated, difficult, intense, beautiful part.